So now let's go ahead and run our preview. And we can put it in the background because with our new logic set up, it is not going to make it one time and then stop until we get back, and then it's going to set it to the new time. It's going to keep looping based on the previous time we set until it's done, okay? So now we come back, we have 5. Okay, so now let's look at the next little error in our logic. And this has to do with while loops. So let's go ahead and get rid of some of those values. And we're just going to let this fill up so we can see what our next error is. And while that's going, I'm just going to pause this real quick. Okay, it's probably run for enough. So we're going to go peek at our preview. And whoa, okay, it's working. Even when the game is on pause, it's making these values. But what's happening here? Why is it at 8 when our maximum is 5? And didn't we have our while loop as a sub-event to our stats being less than 5? But our stats aren't less than 5 anymore. They're supposed to stop when they're, not less than 5. So they should stop when they're 5. Why did that go to 8? And what we have to think about is how while loops work. We're saying, while these conditions are true, and then the only condition we gave it was that our time was less than the current time. So that's the only condition it's looking at. Because this is called a loop, right? Because it does that. If this is true, whatever we put in here, if that's true, it goes here and it does these things. And then it comes back and checks to see if what we put in here is true again. And if it's still true again, it goes and does these things again. And if it's still true again, it goes and does these things again. It's a loop. It's not called a not loop. So it's not going to come out and go back up to the original condition and check if that's true. It doesn't care if this is true because we didn't put this inside the loop. So as far as the loop is concerned, this is only used to trigger the loop. The loop isn't checking it to see if it's true because we didn't put it here. So if we want it to check if it's true, which we do, because we don't want it to go over 5. So what we're going to have to do is copy this and paste it right in here. But before I do, let me just go ahead and let it get back up. Let me pause this so it can get back up, y'all. Okay, so that should be enough. Okay, now see we have 8. Now what did I tell you about your clamped condition? The way we have our clamped condition set up, it will clamp it to 5. But only because of where we have that clamp action, it will only do it when our left mouse button is released. So basically, even if we have 9,000 lives, our player will only get 1 extra life, and that's the first time they click this button. And after that, our clamp says, oh, holy goodness, it's only supposed to go up to 5. And you saw how it fixed it, and it put it to 5. So that's what I meant earlier when I said, if you had other events, that could add or subtract, you would want to move your clamped event somewhere else where it would happen all the time and not just when the player releases the mouse button. Now, we don't have to worry about that because I'm just about to paste this condition in here. So now instead of just checking if whatever time we stored in our time value is less than the current time now, it's also going to check if stats is less than 5. And if either one of these conditions is false, it's going to stop the loop and it's going to carry on with the rest of our logic, okay? So either it'll run out of time and it didn't get to refill all of these, but now we're caught up to time, so then it'll stop and it'll go down, or it will still have a lot of time left, but we've already reached the 5 we need to reach our maximum life. So then in that case, it'll stop the event and go down to the rest of our events, okay? So, I have a feeling I wanted to tell you something else right there. Oh yeah, that's why you really need to fix it too. I mean, it's not really the fact that it went over and it gave the player an extra turn. It's really the fact of how long this loop would take if the player was gone for a week and it came back and it just kept repeatedly going 5 seconds at a time until it caught up with the current time now, you know? So it would be like the player had exited the game with 2 lives left, and a week later they come back. And because it was, you know, they had exited with that, it's all checking the logic, and it's like catching up 5 seconds at a time, or 5 minutes at a time, or 15 minutes at a time for a whole week. I mean, that's just silly. So anyway, that's why we also bring this down here. And you could probably even have this as a standalone event now, because we have, but I'm just going to keep it right under where it'll initially be triggered by that event, okay? So the next thing we need to do, obviously, is reset our time back to 0 once we no longer need to do these events. And when do we no longer need to keep track of time or to do these loop events here, these while loops, is when our maximum life is, when our player life is back where the maximum life is. When it's equal that maximum life, then we can go ahead and set that back to 0. Okay, so let's go ahead and reset that to 0. Before I do, I just want to point out, like, while the game is running, you really don't have to worry about the while loop because time is going in a linear fashion, right? I mean, you're going to reach the amount of time that it should have been filled, and it's going to fill up. So you only really have to worry about that sort of thing when the game is paused or when the game is left so that it can be saved. And that's the only time you really have to worry about. You really need that loop there. Because otherwise time is going in a linear fashion as long as that game is playing and is not paused. But see, once we put it in the background, it ruins our logic. Okay? So let's go ahead and add a new event, and we're going to Shift W, get our event group going. And this one, what are we working on? We're working on resetting the time. So we'll say reset okay, so reset stats time variable when life full. And this one's going to be super easy. We're going to say global variable, value of a global variable, and that was stats dot life. That's how much life our player has, is equal to 5. Then we are going to make a sub event. We're going to change, we'll say if the global variable, value of a global variable, stats dot time, is not equal to 0, then we're going to set it to 0. So global value of a global variable, stats dot time, set to 0. Okay, so if our player life is full and our time variable is not already at 0, we're going to set it to 0. And that just resets it over here so that we can continue on with that logic. Because as you saw when I put the game in the background, I had to hit that button 3 times before it finally subtracted 1 and started adding time. And it's like it was waiting for the time to get ahead of this so it could do that while loop again or something. I don't even know. But anyway, it just ruins the logic. So we just reset it back to 0 when it's full. Okay, so now that that's taken care of, let me see what we need here. Oh yeah, that's what I was going to tell you. What we're going to do, if you've noticed, our maximum life that we're allowing the player to have is 5. And we've written it several times. We have one here, we have one here, we have one here, we have one here, and we have one here. And I didn't want to mention it earlier because we were going over the setup for this tutorial. But that's really not a good habit to get into, to set these hard values in your logic. Reason being is oftentimes you'll want to change them. Okay, case in point, your playtesters give you feedback that makes you think, well, maybe I should change my maximum life to 10. Or maybe I should change the amount of time here to, 10 minutes. Okay, you're just making more work for yourself to set up things that you'll have to go through the code and find every single one and change them, right? Case point 2. What if you, for testing purposes, are making a super short time value just so you can test it, but you want the real game to be like 5 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever, right? So why make it hard for yourself and write all these things that you're going to have to change? Case number 3. You finished the game. It took you 6 months. It took you 8 months. It took you 2 years. I don't know how long it took you. But you finally finish your game. And you're like, this is a really great game. And I can see reskinning it and giving it a different theme and maybe some different values. And making a new game out of it so that I get 2 games that took me 6 months or 8 months or 2 years to make. And that means now it only took me 3 months to make both games, or 4 months to make both games, or 1 year to make both games. So it is a good habit to get into. Not to hard code a lot of values in your game. So we're going to just go through real quick, and we are going to say we're going to make a global variable. And again, you can make this a scene variable if you're doing a scene variable. So my global variable, I'm going to call it max life. Okay, and it's going to be a number. And I'm going to set it to the number of the max life right there. Okay, so now we can hit our, I believe we can hit our search function. Let me see. I'm not even sure how to do that. Let's see. Let me see if I can search for a 5. I don't think I've ever tried searching for a number. It said it found 7 results. I don't think I have 7. I feel like I had less than 7. So I think it's picking up the 5,000 too. So real quick, let's go to our global variables. I'm going to make another variable. And I'm going to call this one regen length. You do not have to name your variables so long. It's probably better to have shorter variable names. I'm doing it so that it helps you follow along with what we're doing in the tutorial. So we're going to set this to a number 2, and I'm going to set that to 5,000. Okay, so we're going to come back to my search, and let me search for 5,000. And now I've found 2. So I'm going to replace that with, let's see, we're going to call it, global variable, what did I call that global variable? Regen length. I don't know if this will work. I've never done that. Okay, so that did work. It set those two values that were 5,000, where we changed it to our time, add it to our timestamp. It changed it to our regen length, okay? So now the next thing we'll search for is 5. And now I have 5 results, and that's more like it. So we'll replace that with our global variable, and I believe I called that max life. Okay, so now unless I broke something, which I hit save right before I did this, so let's see if it's still functioning. It seems to be, but anyway, I did hit save right before I did this, just in case. Alright, let me exit out of that real quick. So, to be clear what we did, we went everywhere we had that 5, and we changed it to our new global variable, max life, so that later if we want to change this, we can just put a new number there, and we don't have to hunt and find it through our entire code. And the same with our regen length, okay? That way if we want to put like any other time later, it's really easy to do. Okay, so now that we have that out of the way, we can either work on our save events next, or we can work on setting our text that shows the little timer up there. And I think we're going to work on our save events because that's probably more familiar to you than our timer formatting. So we're going to do our save events real quick. And like any save events, you got to think, where does it make logical sense to save the game? You know, you want it efficient. You want a very efficient save. So you can save when you click that. That would be fine. That would save it when you subtract a value, but not when a value was added. Which in itself isn't that problematic because it would just, when you start the game, it would just go back to that last one and it would just, you know, add it up to where it should be. But let's just go ahead and do our save events where this value changes. So every time this value changes, we'll just have a new save event. Whether it went up or whether it went down, we'll just have a new save event. And we already have an event in our logic here that keeps track of when that value changes. And that's our text string right here. This little guy. He's already keeping track of if he matches our stats life or not, and he changes accordingly. So we can put a save event attached to this little guy because he's already keeping track of that kind of thing. So let's go ahead to our lives text setting. We're just going to Shift A. And we're just going to add a new event. And we're going to see, we need to write our whole stats, our global variable stats that has our time stored in it and our life stored in it. We need to write that to storage, okay? So look for write. And we want to write a text because we're going to save a structured variable. So we're going to need to turn it into a text, a string here. And let's make a storage name. And don't hesitate to make one unique to your game. You don't want a generic storage name that someone else might have used. Because if your player also has that game, it might, it just might mess it up. So we're just going to call this, I'm going to call it LuckyJ. You call yours your name. I'm going to call mine LuckyJ Life Regen, okay? Because probably no one has that. And the group is going to be stats because that's the name of the variable I'm saving. So I'm just going to do that. And the text I want to write is going to be a JSON text because we're taking a structured variable and we need to turn it into a string. So we're going to have to use the global variable to JSON. So type JSON and we will see this top one says global var to JSON. So let's hit that. And what's the name of our global variable that we want to convert? It's called stats because that has our time in it and that has our life in it. It's got both things in it. So we'll go ahead and hit OK on that. And this is a sub event of our text changing. So every time our text detects that it's not the value of our current life, it's going to change, and then it's also going to save that information to our storage. Okay? So that was our save event there. Fairly easy. So now let's add, now we need a load event. So let's just make this an automatic load that loads when the game starts and not a button that the player has to press. So we're going to hit Shift A because face it, the player might never press that button. They might save it, they might keep coming back when they have 5 lives and not like reloading when they had none. I don't know. But we will say now, since we wrote a text, now we have to read a text. But before that, let's see if that text even exists in our storage. So let's say condition will be existence, and we're looking for existence of a group, and our group name was stats. And that's our storage name. Our group name was stats, and I hope you remembered what you called yours. I think I called mine LuckyJ Life Regen. Okay, so if we look in storage and we see that our stats exist, then we're going to take that out of storage and put it into our game. So go ahead and type read in your action, and we'll say read a text because we stored it as a text. And once again, put your storage name, LuckyJ Life Regen, and our group was stats. And now it wants the scene variable where we're going to store that, because you can't take anything out of storage and put it directly into an object variable or a global variable. So first we're just going to pass it to a scene variable. I'm just going to call mine temp var. Okay? So I'm going to, if my stats exist in that storage, LuckyJ Life Regen, I'm going to read that from that same storage, and I'm going to store it in temp var. And now I've got to convert this string back into a structure and put it in my global variable stats so that my game could run right. So let's hit action, and we'll just put JSON. Okay? And we'll see convert JSON to a global variable. That's the one I want. And our JSON string, and remember we stored that when we got it out of storage, and we put it into a variable, a scene variable right here. Oh, well look, and it says toString. So anytime it says toString, that's a number, and we didn't actually put it in a number variable because we're storing a text. So we need to type that again, variable, and this is the one we want, variable string scene variable, and that was called temp var. So that's where my JSON is. Now I got to put the global variable where I want to store the object, and that's in our variable stats. Okay, so that should pretty much take care of our save event. Let's go ahead and check it out. And we should be saving things right now because that value is changing. So we can exit out, and we can come back, and we can look, and we can see it was saved. Okay, so our save and load events are correct. And now I will just point out, a lot of times when you do your load events, that's where you can make errors, because you might have a lot of other events setting up your scene. For instance, we're changing our global variable stats life, and we're setting it to our global variable max life, which was 5. It's fine right here, Because what we're doing is we're saying, if this person has never played the game, do this. And then we're overriding that by saying, if they have played the game, actually set that to this, okay? So that's fine because we're overriding this. We're first assuming they've never played, and then we're saying, but if they did play and they got this in storage, then instead of this, set it to this, okay? But now what if we had, let me just do a Shift A. What if we got this out of storage first, and then we changed our global variable and set it to 5? Okay, let's see what happens then. Let me go ahead and put us on 0, and then we'll exit out and we'll come back. And now we see right away we're on 5. And it's because first we got it out of storage and we set our variable to that, whatever they should have had. And then we go back and overwrite that by saying, no, wait, set it to 5, okay? So that's just an example of when you're doing your load events, it's just something to be aware of, because you will still need your regular beginning of scene events as if the player has never played, okay? So you just got to kind of put your load events in a logical place. Okay, so I believe that's it for our save and load events. So now we are actually, you are going to be lucky enough to see one of my very favorite extensions ever in GDevelop. This is one I use in every single game, project that I make, and it is called the time formatting extension. Let me go find it. We're about to install it in our game. So go to extensions and we want to create or search for a new extension. This extension is so underrated. It is so useful. I cannot say enough nice things about this extension. So we'll look for time format, and this is the one we want. And I don't know how to say this person's name. B-O-U-W. It could be Boo, but that's not how we spell Boo in the South, so it might not be Boo. I don't know. But we'll just call him Boo because he's really, or she's really sweet for making this extension. This is a wonderful extension. So what this does, this converts seconds into standard time formats, okay? So we're going to install that into our project so that we can format our little timer to give us how much time until the next life is ready, okay? And you're saying, well, how can we do that? Because it said it formatted in seconds, and we're using milliseconds. And I say, well, what is the advantage of using milliseconds? It's just very easy to convert into seconds, and it's very easy to convert seconds into milliseconds. So let's just go ahead and add our new object. This will be a new sprite, and I'm just going to call this one text background. And we're going to add an animation. I'm going to add my text background there. Actually, that should be timer background. And remember, you don't got to name things so long. I do it in the tutorial so to help you keep track, because it's harder in a video to see what's going on. But you should probably want to name your things shorter, because I'm sure it would take up less space in your final project. So we'll go ahead and we'll just drag this to our scene. And now we're going to make a new text box. And I'm going to call this one TimerText. And I'm just going to set it to 50. We're going to bold and italic it, and I'm going to choose white for my color. And for my text display, I'm just going to make sure I have 4 digits here, because for this logic, this example anyway, I would probably never go into hours. I would probably just be doing minutes and seconds. Now if I did go into hours, I could make like this, you know what I mean? But I'm just going to do this because I just plan on doing minutes or seconds. So let's go ahead and apply that. Oh, you know what? Drag that back up there. I also want to center it. Okay, so now let me go ahead and put it right there. And I'm going to preview it, and it looks so right. Okay, so now I'm going to add one more text box, and I'm just going to call this one Next Life Text. I'm going to set it to 45. I'm going to do, I think, sort of a brown color, almost black. And I'm just going to say Next Life colon, and I'm going to bold and italic that. And I'm just going to drag this and just put it somewhere above that text we have there. Let me see what it looks like. Yeah, it'll do. Okay, now for our text formatting, where we get to show off this really nice extension that saves us so much time and trouble, we could add a new event. Because what we're going to have to say is when our value right here goes less than our maximum life, when our life value goes less than our maximum life, we want to set this text to be the value of the time we're keeping track of, okay? And we also want to say when this value equals our maximum life, we want to set this text to say full. So we can set up two new things. We could say, let's see, global variable, value of a global variable, and that was stats.life is equal to our global variable, and that was max life. No, and remember, max life and the length of region, those global variables are not in our stats variable because we don't need to save those. Those are just variables we put in our game to give our game valuable information so that it can run correctly, okay? So, global variable max life. If our global variable stats life equals our global variable max life, which is 5, then we want to modify our timer text, and we want to set it to say full, and we need that in double quotes, okay? So let's go see if it sets it to full since our life is at 5. Okay, so it did set it to full. I'm actually going to add a space in there too, right in front of the F, just because I do have that centered, and this is less letters than my time took up. So that looks a little bit better. Okay, so now I could do another one just like this, only the global variable of stats life is less than the global variable max life, then change the text to timer and set to the value of the time we're keeping track of, okay? But I want to show you something real quick. Let's go up to our refill life event. Okay, and let's go up to our reset values when full event. Okay, so the one we have here is actually equal to this. This is the same thing right here. So instead of making, because we would need to make one that looked like this too, when we set the timer to the value we're keeping track of, the time text. So instead of making new conditions that are the same as these conditions to keep track of our new little text box over here, we're just going to take this out and we're going to move this under the one we already have. Okay, so that's what we did for there. Now, this is the same as what we just had. We just took it away and put it under there because it was the same thing. So there's really no point in having another one. Okay, so it's still going to change our text to say full whenever it's full. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing up here. I'm just going to add an event. And for this event, we're going to modify the text first. So let's come into action. And we're going to hit our TimerText, modify the text, and here's where we get to use our formatter that we just imported as an extension, that fabulous extension. We're going to modify the text, we're going to set it to, and now just go ahead and hit formatter, and you're going to see time formatter. And the one I want is the first one, the seconds to hours, minutes, seconds, okay? The second one says seconds to hours, minutes, seconds, milliseconds. But I'm just going to use the one that goes from seconds and it formats it to hours, minutes, seconds. Okay? So now that I have my time formatter up here, in here, I've got to enter the number, which is the time in seconds. So let's go see the formula. I'm going to have to build an expression here. And the expression I want to do is I want to subtract the current timestamp, whatever time it is now. I want to subtract that from the time I have stored in my variable stats time. So let's say global variable stats.time. Okay? And now get right in between this one right here, this little parentheses, get in between those and put minus time, hit the one that says string, do your double quotes, and get timestamp. Okay? But this is milliseconds, and I need seconds because the time formatter works in seconds. So really quickly, I'm going to go up here, and I'm going to insert one more parentheses there, and one more there, just to be tidy. And then in between these last two parentheses right here, I'm going to put divided by 1000, okay? So that's what I want to modify the text and my text object to. I'm going to take my global variable stats time, and I'm going to minus timestamp from it, the current time from it. Okay, and we'll just see how that looks. So right now it's full, and then as soon as I click one, okay, it's counting down 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay. Okay, so that's working pretty good. And I'm just going to also compare my text out of habit. So TimerText, compare the text, and I'm going to put it to not equal to. And I'm just going to copy this, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to paste that in there. So if it's not equal to this, set it to that. It's basically what I'm saying. Which, I mean, it's so quick, of course it won't matter, but just a matter of habit. So, was that all I needed to say in this tutorial? Let me see. Oh, we can just go test how it looks in minutes, okay? So let's go ahead. We're going to go to my, not my properties, my global variables, and I'm going to get my regen length, which is where I stored how many milliseconds I wanted my time to be. And right now it's at 5 seconds, which is 5,000 milliseconds. So we're going to see what it looks like in 5 minutes. And to do that, we would just type in how many seconds is in 5 minutes, which is 300, and then we would add 3 zeros to that. Okay, so we'll just apply that, and we'll just see how that looks in the time formatter. So we go to full, and now you can see it's counting down our 5 minutes. And I actually shouldn't have done that because, let me pause it because I want you to see, well, I think you've already seen how it gets to 0 and then it just starts down the count again until it gets to full. So let me pause this video real quick and go over my my logic here and make sure I did everything I had wanted to cover in this tutorial. Okay, so I think I did go over everything I wanted to cover in this tutorial. So that's it. This is how you can make a sort of energy based or a Candy Crush style life regenerating thing. And you can actually apply it to a lot of other areas. I'll probably do one more just like this, only showing how to do it with like a bar, like a status bar, because I know that'll probably be the next question is, okay, you do that with like just numbers counting down, but how can you do it if a bar is shrinking or gaining energy, okay? Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. It was pretty fun to make.